Should we go around the NBA and take a look at what the injury status is of all of the players that are injured and also the players that are injured? Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I'd like to announce a new addition to the staff for Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Our new statistical consultant is Terrence Howard. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Blue Sky at joshloyd.bsky.social, on Twitter at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, use the code LOCKEDONNBA, and get $20 off your first purchase. Also, LockedOnDaily.com. Head across there, check out all of the best newsletters. Maybe you want to check out the Jazz newsletter to find out the status of the debilitating back spasms for Lauri Markkanen and John Collins' hip problem. It's all over there at the Locked On Jazz newsletter. But whatever team you want, LockedOnDaily.com is where you just jump over to. Thumbs and bangs are always welcome over here. Let's take a look at injuries on what is National Hot Pastrami Sandwich Day. Very specific, it's hot pastrami sandwich, which also, goated sandwich, by the way, one of the best sandwiches ever. Probably tops, I think it definitely tops a club. I think it tops a Reuben as well, although there's not that much difference between the two. But hot pastrami sandwich day, so go and eat your hot pastrami sandwiches. This is the day to celebrate. This is our day, fellas. We made it. Let's talk about injuries across the NBA. Let's start at the bottom of the alphabet. Let's go to the Washington Wizards. And we've got Malcolm Brogdon, who is dealing with a foot injury, and this is going to keep him out because it's Malcolm Brogdon and because it's the Wizards. We just don't know exactly how long it's going to keep him out. He is ruled out for today. I've got a return there saying the 19th of January. Who knows? This is one of the teams where you're just going to have nonsense going on, and this is one of the players where you're going to have nonsense going on. That is going to be the thing. You do not need to roster Malcolm Brogdon, and with him out, it just means more for Bub Carrington. It means more for Kispert, for George, for Champagny, for Butler, but they're still going to vary a lot. And Carrington, even in big minutes, is not really doing enough to justify a 12-team league roster spot. Marvin Bagley's knee injury, still no significant update on that. I'm looking at around trade deadline, all-star break return, but also doesn't really matter. All that matters is that if Sarr is out, it means Rashawn Holmes gets those backup center minutes behind Valanciunas. And I'd love to see a little bit more of Tristan Vukcevic. We saw some interesting stuff from him, and I'm still not ruling out that he's going to be a silly season legend at some point, although Sarr being around what will impact that. But Vukcevic is dealing with an ankle problem, and he is out at the moment. Maybe he returns to the next game, but again, it literally just doesn't matter for most people. Here's where we get stuff that's interesting. It's Utah. What the hell do we do? Because some of this is garbage, clearly, and we have got 3 months of this continuing. It will continue. I am very certain of this, and this is why I have wanted nothing to do with any Jazz player in the top portion of the draft. That was one player, Lauri Markkanen. Now, I drafted Keontae George. I don't think I drafted Walker Kessler, but I had no problem drafting him late. I drafted Colin Sexton in some leagues. No problem with that, because they're later picks and you don't know what will happen. And whatever you get, you get. But I wanted nothing to do with Markkanen. Let's talk about George, who's missed 5 consecutive games with this heel soreness. I'll put him as doubtful for the game on Wednesday, but I also literally don't know. They've only got 2 games this week as well. I think Keontae George had an ability with 30-plus minutes, being a lead guard with usage, to be a useful player this season. He started out shaky. He was solid enough, started to look better, but also I don't think you need to hold. Isaiah Collier was putting up pretty good numbers. He's also been terrible in most games outside of the last one in terms of doing anything that's not assists, and that was really good in the last game. But 2 games this week, there's no rush on any of this stuff to claim these guys or sit on them or anything. Also, I don't know whether John Collins is going to play. Collins missed a million games, came back, played one random game, which they smashed the Heat in by 36 points. Okay, then he was out for personal reasons, and then he was out again for the hip injury. It's screaming bullshit. Simple as that. It's screaming absolutely not true. I don't know how long he's going to be out. He defied all my expectations this season, and now it looks like, obviously it's an IL stash, but I don't think he's going to come back and play 35 a night when he returns. But who replaces him? Michael Potter? Kyle Filipowski, who is the guy that if I had stash ability, him and Collier would be very high up there. Jordan Clarkson with a plantar fascia issue. This literally could end his season. They said 2 weeks. If he doesn't play again, don't be shocked. Torn plantar fascia is a long-term issue. And while a torn plantar fascia is actually a better recovery than just plantar fasciitis, they've got no incentive to bring him back. So don't be shocked if he doesn't play. Johnny Juzang has a hand fracture. They said, maybe he'll just play through the fracture. Okay, cool. I got a 28th of January maybe return for Juzang. That's just a deeper league spot there. And then the last two guys rested on the weekend, Lowry Markin and Walker Kessler. Now, I put that there not to say that they're going to rest every game, but it feels like that whenever we get a chance, they are going to sit, especially Markkinen. And I made the bet yesterday with nobody, but I made the bet that Markkinen will not play a week with 4 games again the rest of this season. I don't know that to be true. Well, it's only 2 games this week, so we won't get it this week. Next week, they got a back-to-back. Won't do it that week. The week after, they got a back-to-back. Won't do it that week. The week after, they got a back-to-back. Won't do it that week. The week after, they got a back-to-back. Won't do it that week. So, yeah, I'm pretty confident that bet's going to hold for a while in terms of Markkinen not playing 4 games in a week. So that's where we're at with the Jazz. Annoying. Frustrating. I know you're going to be annoyed at this one. The Toronto Raptors, their injury report is clean. Just one bloke on there. And that's Emmanuel Quickley, who's popped up with hip soreness. Oh, no. The guy that will get the extra minutes or the backup point guard role is Jamal Shed, and that's a deeper league stash of Quickley's. But before you want to jump on Quickley and tell me about how he's the softest bloke going ever, he's not out. He hasn't been ruled out. He just has hip soreness. And this team is going to Utah Jazz. They are going to do that. I feel they're terrible. They are very bad. And I think they might have a very rough future, but that's okay. They are going to be bad, and they are going to lean into fake injuries in March. That will happen. But I don't think it's going to be happening as early as it is the other teams. But quickly with a hip problem, Shed, Walter, a little bit more of Bruce Brown, a little bit more of Abaji, who's dealing with that hip issue, even though he was healthy and didn't play last game. In San Antonio, only one guy sitting on that injury report at the moment, and that is Jeremy Don't Mess with the Sohan, who had that back problem, missed a game, came back, played 2, missed a game, and then the next 2 games the next game got postponed, and now that game looks like it'll be on today on Monday, and we'll see whether Sohan's available. He's officially questionable, so that is somewhat good news in terms of they're not ruling him out. And I don't think you should have dropped him, and I think you should hold, and I don't think you should be worried about Steph Curry. And I know that there is a wide spectrum of people who watch this show or play fantasy basketball. There's people who have a spiritual devotion to the game, people who treat it secularly. There's just a numerous bunch of guys. But I had someone ask me yesterday, "Hey, should I be dropping Steph Castle?" Yeah, yeah. What? Yeah, that should never have been a thing. But people are still doing these things. So sometimes when I say a comment, you go, of course, Josh, everybody knows you're not rostering the 250th best player in Steph Castle. But not everybody. So it is important sometimes to mention those things. So don't roster Steph Castle. That is the San Antonio Spurs. On the Sacramento Kings, well, nobody's injured. The injury report's clean. And that's why we saw Keon Ellis play 20 minutes only. And I think, again, stashability is an important thing, but we're going to need an injury for Keon to be a 12-team league player. The next team who is going to Utah Jazz their way into our hearts is going to be Portland. We knew this heading in. These were the 2 teams that I was very steadfast against having any confidence in. None. These are the 2 teams that I was very sure they would do it because they've shown their ass before. Jeremy Grant has a facial contusion. And Chauncey Billups, NBA Coach of the Year, came out and said, yeah, we're still dealing with some swelling and bruising, which I'm sure there's that. People get whacked in the face all the time. Oh, we're going to have to ramp him back up. From a face contusion, what do you need to ramp him up for? Losses? Let me give you a tip, Chauncey. Jeremy Grant doesn't help you win. Don't actually need to do that. But anyway, he's out. Well, why would we bother rostering him? He's not good, and he's hurt. I think that if you want to clear him out, get rid of him. What is the point of him? He's useless. See you later, Jez. And now we're getting the center stuff start. DeAndre Ayton has a calf issue, sore left calf. Last season, he did not sit down the stretch. He played. So again, if you want to grab Donovan Clingan, the time to do it is now. There is no guarantee that he runs at more than 15 minutes a night, though, because Ayton literally might play and play all the way through to March. Rob Williams also dealing with an illness. That's, I'm sure, absolutely true. We know that if Williams played 20 a night, we'd roster him, but he's not, so you don't. And then Matisse Thybulle, another setback. Another setback on that ankle. They said not a setback, he just is not where they want him to be. So we're looking at him as an end of January return. And who's going to play first this season? There's a couple of these guys that we just haven't seen. He's one of them. And Bojan Bogdanovic is another one. Who plays first this season? Really, it's a great question. It's not that good, but it's a question at least. On to the Phoenix Suns. Grayson Allen left the last game with knee soreness. No update on whether that's something that moves forward. They said they'll have to manage it. But also with Royce O'Neal back, Allen's not going to play enough minutes to matter in 12-team leagues. Their schedule is not a Schedule Plus anymore, so move on from him. And then Yusuf Nurkic is dealing with influenza. Of course he is. He might join them on their road trip. I've ruled him out for at least the next 3 games, and I wouldn't bother holding him. I know people are going to be, there's going to be a trade happen. I will, again, be very, very, very clear on this. If you see a trade talked about as something that is happening, yes, unless it comes from Shams, with a step down to Stein or Haynes, with a step down to Fisher, that's the only thing you look at. Anybody else, dismiss it. The amount of people that told me, guys, don't worry, Nick Richards is going to Phoenix and Nurkic is going to Charlotte. That's what's happening. It's not. It's not. I'm not saying that a trade won't happen at some point, but that is not happening. It might happen, but it is not happening. And that the account that is putting that out there does not have the sources to tell you that. So why would it make sense that Charlotte takes Yusuf Nurkic to be Mark Williams' backup? Why? So as we head 4 weeks away from NBA trade deadline, be very cautious about making fantasy moves based on a rumor that, I'm telling you, has probably got a 5% chance of these things coming true. 2% chance. It will be detrimental to your team. So anyway, Nurkic can be dropped in most situations. I'm pretty sure that's, I'm pretty sure. I know that's how I feel about that, but we'll see how that all plays out. We'll come back, talk about other teams. But today's episode is actually brought to you by a new sponsor, and that is Wayfair. After the holidays are over, well, sometimes we just like to tidy up our home, give it a bit of a refresh, decluttering, refreshing your space, get you back into that work, school, whatever, life routine. And sometimes you might want to give your space a new look, and Wayfair has everything that you need, all within your budget. You're looking for furniture, that's what Wayfair can bring. That fits your style, fits your budget. They have free and hassle-free delivery, even for larger items. Wayfair's site is also so easy to navigate, and whatever you need to find, you can find it there in no time. So whatever style, whatever home, whatever sort of situation you're in, whatever space, whatever budget, Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration for every space. So give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That is WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. Okay, let's go to the next team here on this injury list, and we're sticking in the P's because that sounds bad. Philadelphia 76ers, a lot of guys sitting on that injury list for them at the moment. Caleb Martin missed the last game with a groin injury. He's only a deep league player anyway, and when he is out, it just means there's a melange of garbage that steps in there. Sorry to these blokes, but a Ricky Council, a Reggie Jackson, a Justin Edwards, a Gershon Yabusele, guys that don't really mean that much for us in a fantasy scenario. It hasn't really been talked about at all, but Joel Embiid's missed 4 games in a row with not a knee injury, after he missed 4 games earlier on with a face fracture. Avoiding Joel Embiid in the first round, which was one of my big statement calls this season, has been, I think, a very good call. But the problem of why I avoided him has not really even shown its head or shown its face. Well, it has, because he didn't play for 5 weeks to begin the year. But yeah, Embiid is still out. I don't know if he returns on Tuesday, but they got a Tuesday, Wednesday back-to-back, and then a Saturday, Sunday back-to-back, so he's max playing 2 games this week. KJ Martin's dealing with a foot problem. Maybe he's back on the weekend, but even then, we don't really worry about him too much. Kyle Lowry with a hip problem. Maybe he plays in one of those games on the weekend as well. And then Andre Drummond with a toe injury has also missed 4 consecutive games, which means that it's been a lot of Yabusele at center and a lot of Boner. And Yabusele's been okay, but like we've talked about with so many players, Yves Missi, the name that springs to mind off the top of my head, is that when you are in a perfect situation where there's no KJ Martin, there's no Andre Drummond, there's no Joel Embiid, and you're still putting up some good ones and some mid ones, well, my hope for you in the future is not there. And that's where I'm at with Yabusele, because it couldn't be an easier spot for you to put up numbers, and yet you're still not doing it enough. Let's go on to the next team here. We're out of the P-letter teams, and we're talking about the Orlando Magic. I think a lot of people on the injury report. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope missed the last game with knee soreness. They listed him probable, but then he was out. That's not a good sign. I do not know whether he's going to be able to return for this next one. I'll put him as questionable status to play in this one. And the other one that left the last game, well, there's 2 guys that left the last game, and that was Tristan da Silva with an illness and Goga Badadze with a hip problem. No update yet on Goga's status. His minutes were already starting to trend down with the return of Paolo Banchero. I don't know that you want to drop him yet, but that is the direction that I see it going. I think he will become a drop. We'll see what happens with this injury. Jalen Suggs, maybe he's able to be back on the weekend. We don't really have a firm timetable on his back injury. And with him out, Cole Anthony's the guy to grab. I'd much rather have Cole Anthony than grab Mr. Black. Anthony Black is fine if KCP is out. He had a really good game the last time out, but the ability to trust him should not be there and does not need to be there. Jed Howard's dealing with an ankle sprain. I reckon he misses probably most of this week. And then there is another player on this injury list, and this is the perpetual memorial Gary Harris hamstring injury plaque. He's done it again, and I think that maybe he's out this week, but I wouldn't be shocked if we don't see him until February. And then that's just not going to matter for most people in fantasy. I'd say that's pretty safe to say as well. All right, let's go on now and talk about the Oklahoma City Thunder. Still absolutely no updates whatsoever on Alex Caruso. He just had this hip strain, came back, played like a game, and now has been out 3 weeks. We haven't seen him in January at all. I don't know when he's coming back. I've ruled him out at the moment for the next 2 games at least. They've got a Thursday, Friday back-to-back, so maybe he plays in one of those. No idea. Just no updates at all. It's frustrating. Obviously, we're not holding Caruso, and that is probably one of the biggest misses I've had this season. I thought Caruso could be like an 80 to 90 ranked player. I thought they'd give him 27 minutes a night, but they don't, and now he also just doesn't play. And he also can't shoot anymore. Just a horrible miss on that one. And with him out, it just means more for Wallace, the Hong Kong mattress. It means more for Joe. It means more for Wiggins. We've seen it. We've seen this story. Chet Holmgren, I've got him out probably after the All-Star break, a return. I know there's some people feeling excited that they're seeing him walking around without crutches. That's all cool and stuff, but it's a fractured hip, man. I think it's a long-term thing. I think he's going to be pretty limited when he returns. I'm not expecting him back at any point in January, and I think February is a reasonable expectation. AJ Mitchell suffered a pretty significant toe injury. He was really playing well. We've got an April return for him, which obviously means you're not holding in most spots. And then Adam Flagler, two-way guy, has a hand fracture. Maybe he's a couple of games away again. But for the vast majority of you, that's just not going to matter. On the Knicks, they've got a back-to-back on Monday. And Jalen Brunson popped up, not with a foot/ankle/calf issue, but a shoulder issue this time. Oh, okay. So if he does miss, then we're looking at Juice McBride, you're looking at Cameron Payne, you're looking at Landry Shamet. But the last time Brunson missed was the game that the dreadful soreness of McBride's hamstring popped up, so it was Payne who stepped into that role. I still think it'll be McBride if this happens again, but I don't know. And then Mitchell Robinson's out, I believe, until the end of February, and I don't believe there's any reason to be stashing him. I don't want to stash a guy who's the backup center who might play 14 minutes. I don't think that's worthwhile, to be honest. The New Orleans Pelicans, they've been banged up all season, and there's still 2 major guys on the shelf. Hasn't really been any update on Brandon Ingram at all, so I'll feel just okay about saying just ruling out for this week. But I don't know. They could pop up and say, yeah, he's coming back Wednesday, because they're going to Tuesday, Wednesday back-to-back. But no idea. And then Herb Jones with the torn labrum. It is possible to be an 8-week return in a torn labrum, which would put him towards the middle of March. But their season's going literally nowhere. If you have surgery on the labrum at 6 months, I would think that they would want to go in. They'd want to make sure they can clear up and do it with surgery immediately. So he's available, ready to go, training camp, all clear. But what do I know? I don't know what they'll do. I believe that he'll probably be out for the season, Jones, and I also know that he's not good enough to wait for a diagnosis, a further evaluation of a time frame. If you don't have the injured slot, he's not good enough to hold in that position. And last game, we saw with them being healthy-ish, no Ingram back still, you couldn't get value out of Alvarado or Hawkins or Boston. None of them. We got 20 minutes of Tice, we got 20 minutes of Green, we got 13 Hawkins and 8 Boston and 12 Alvarado. There's just not enough for those guys to consider to be options for 12s. Not even close. And then Ingram coming back will make it even worse. 2 rookies on the Minnesota Timberwolves injury report. One of them is Rob Dillingham, who's probably 3 games or so away from returning. We've got him maybe a weekend return. The other one is Terrence Shannon, who popped up today with a foot problem. We're looking at him maybe a return at the beginning of February. Not that it matters. He's played about 2 minutes all season, and that is a fantastic example of, and I know it's a minority of people, but they saw his first massive game at Summer League, Shannon, and people were like, man, the Wolves, he's got to play. He has to. He's going to get 25 minutes a night. I like him as a late round selection. People said that about Dillingham as well. But that's why we always got to be like, no, he's a 24-year-old rookie in Summer League who had a really strong game, who attempted like 20 shots at the rim because no one guarded anything. And it made absolutely no sense when you look at the 240 game for these minutes to appear. It just didn't, right? So there's always going to be, and sometimes, I guess because I see a lot of it, I'm putting out spot fire type comments about people's increased or literally like no basis in reality hype on somebody that you don't always see. But it is important when you start to get these ideas or these thoughts of this guy might do this, and you got to like pull yourself back down and be like, don't think so. Like, where does it make sense? How can it happen? And that's nearly always one of the things that stops you making gigantic mistakes in fantasy, is just by going, how? How would that happen? Why did it happen? And how would it happen? I think that's a good way of looking at it. But I don't know. The next team, the Milwaukee Bucks. Only a couple of guys sitting on that injury report at the moment. One of them is Gary Trent, dealing with a hip issue. We know what Trent is. You try him out for steals and threes. It doesn't work. That's okay. All good. And the other one there is Ryan Rollins, who is getting close to his 50-game limit. He's over halfway. He's got 21 games left. He's out with an illness. He's only going to matter if Damian Lillard is out, and I think that's the way you need to treat that. We've got more teams to cover off. Before we do that, though, today's episode is brought to you by the Game Time app. Live events. We know how cool they are. We know how fun they are. We want to go to them. We want to see sports. We want to see live theater. We want to see musicals. We want to see comedy. And Game Time makes it easier to get those tickets. It takes the hassle out of getting tickets. It cuts the fluff out of the ticket buying process. With Game Time picks, they just show you the amazing deals. So you don't have to try and wonder, is this a good deal? Is this a good price? What's this one? What am I doing? No, the Game Time picks just shows you the good ones. So you don't have to worry about whether you are actually doing the right thing and getting the tickets to these events. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time and download the Game Time app. You create an account and you use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Today's episode is also brought to you by these legends. They are back. The Hungry Rooters. Hungry Root is back. And when you're looking at meal planning and grocery shopping, well, sometimes you don't have time to be able to plan that stuff out and be healthy and stick to your cuisine-based goals. Well, when you discover Hungry Root, like you're doing right now, it can be an absolute game changer. The easiest way for you to eat healthy without all the stress. With Hungry Root, it's like having a personal shopper and nutritionist all in one. They take care of your shopping. They recommend meals. They get groceries based on your taste and health goals. And the meals that you can get there are ready in 15 minutes or less. So you're going to love Hungry Root, I'm telling you. And for a limited time, you can get 40% off your first box and get a free item in every box for life, just like the NWO. So just go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Code is LockedOnNBA to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Code LockedOnNBA. Don't miss out. Hungry Root. Get rooted. Okay. That is a bunch of teams done. How about the Miami Heat? Should look at them because there's a couple of guys that are sitting on that list, and one of them is James Butler. 2 more suspension games for Jimmy remaining, And that means that he is eligible to play again this weekend. And initially it was thought he just wouldn't play again for the Heat. And now the reporting's come out, guess what? Because nobody wants to trade for him, that he might actually be available to play. Because it's all about money. He doesn't want to keep getting suspended and getting fines. Yeah? Simple. So it looks like he might play. Now, will he play with effort? Will he try? Will he get a fake injury? Will General Soreness report for duty? That's all very possible. So let's watch to see what happens. We've got 2 more games, Sons Butler. Bam Adebayo actually just popped up on the injury report with a back contusion. And if he is out, then you are streaming Superman. And if that is a long-term Bam thing, then yes, that is where Khalil Ware comes in. So we'll monitor it. And then Josh Richardson's dealing with this heel injury. It's just been a long-term thing. I think he's played like 6 games this season. He is actually like officially washed, I'd say, Joshy. One of those guys that had this great potential, came up, flashed for 2-3 years, and then sort of dropped off, and now is just done. Like, I think he's just absolutely cooked at this point in his career. The Grizzlies' injury report is long and distinguished, just like my Johnson. Ja Morant is dealing with an illness. Of course he is. Can this bloke go 2 games without an injury report appearance? If he is out, you stream in Scott Pippen, and when Morant plays, you don't use Scott Pippen. It's just been a absolutely... And he hasn't even been suspended yet, Ja. It's just been an outrageous run of things that are going wrong. Marcus Smart, I'm looking at about another week with his finger. I don't care about stashing him. I don't think that role is really there. And then Vince Williams Jr., we're looking at the beginning of February with an ankle sprain. And yes, I know GG Jackson is doing some work with the G League team. They still said end of the month as a return. And also, no, he will not likely be a 12-team league guy at any point this season. Jay Huff's on the injury report with a knee issue. He's listed as probable there. That's cool, but if he is out, it helps Zach Edey. If he is in, it hurts Zach Edey. And Cam Spencer suffered a thumb fracture, so he's out for multiple weeks. We've got like around a trade deadline return for Spencer, who's a 2-way contract player. For the Lakers, Anthony Davis, we haven't seen them play for a while. Obviously, the 2 games postponed. Last time we saw them, and currently now, we've got Davis and LeBron on the injury report. Davis with a foot, LeBron resting. Injury management, LeBron is going to be resting some games down the stretch here without really any question. We also, that's another one to add into the list of the Bojan Bogdanović's and Matisse Thybulle's. When will Christian Wood play? I think he will play before those guys, but we haven't seen him yet. Another week or so maybe for Wood. And then Jared Vanderbilt looks like his return is coming. And no, he is not going to be a fantasy option. All he does is further tell you that you shouldn't be rostering Rui Hachimura. So Vanderbilt is coming back maybe end of the week. Jalen Hood-Schifino, will he play more than... What's your over-under on Hood-Schifino minutes for the season? If I said it at 9.5, you got to take the under, don't you? Because I'm pretty sure he's played like 3 minutes all season. Yeah, so hamstring, cool. Whatever. And Bronny James is questionable with an illness. We also haven't seen Bronny play for a very, very long time either. On to the Clippers. They're actually clean on the injury report. There's nothing there at the moment, so that's great news. Let's hope it sticks. Not sure it will. And then one that we got yesterday, and I would love to get an update from these guys, but we have not got it yet. That's Tyrese Haliburton. Hamstring. Same hamstring that he hurt last time that cost him all that time that the 65-game rule pushed him to come back early from, that ruined the second half of his season, ruined the playoffs, ruined the Olympics, and then he re-injured in the Olympics. And then the start of the season's been bad, and now it's sore again. They are completely ridiculous if he plays after this. But they were ridiculous last year. I don't think that he will play in their next 2 games, Tuesday, Thursday. But I also, their track record of managing it is terrifically horrible. So, yeah. I don't think that he plays. I think that they need to just say, you need 2 weeks off. But again, what would I know? Do you remember last year how he had 1 week off for a 4-week injury and then came back and they played him 21 minutes every night so he hit the minimum for the All-NBA stuff? Yeah. Anyway, I think that Haliburton will miss at least the next 2, hopefully the rest of the week, hopefully more. And then that means Andrew Nembhard, absolute must. That doesn't mean they play TJ McConnell 25 minutes. We all wish he would for fantasy purposes. Doesn't mean they will. They'll go to more Shepherd, more Mathurin, and McConnell plays a little bit more, and he will be useful to pick up. Aaron Nesmith, I just don't know. I thought that he might return the beginning of December, and here we are on the 14th of January and still no Aaron Nesmith. So I'll just rule him out for at least the next 2 as well. And when he returns, it means it's harder for Shepherd, it's harder for Mathurin, it's harder for Jarris Walker, to play enough. Walker was great last game. But he played 7 minutes the game before that, 19 the game before that, 11 the game before that. It's a little bit all over the place. So just pay some attention to what Nesmith's status is if we ever get an update. I guess we will at some point. Now, let's go to the Houston Rockets, where I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but Tyrese is doubtful again. This is incredibly scary. They told us that it's not the same as last season, but I'm so sorry to tell you, Houston. I know you can protect your player, and that's true. But when you do the exact same pattern of reporting that you did last season, it's going to be hard for me to think that it's not the same. It's the same leg. It's the same pain. It's the same injury reporting. It's the same obfuscation. I'm so sorry. I'm going to be worried about it. You don't roster Tyrese. You can't do it in 10 or 12 team leagues. I know the appeal is there. But like we know with the nickname, at some point, Tyree next season, Jabari Smith's out. It would be the chance, but he's been out for weeks now. So he's not going to come in with this soreness in his leg and just roll into 26 minutes. So, yeah, unfortunately, it might be a situation where it just never happens for him. Also, a fantastic illustration. Him and Trey Murphy both. You know, they both played, I think, 82 games as rookies. 82 games. Iron Men. And now look where we are. Oh, I just noticed that the graphic had frozen up. That's sick. Love when that happens. Oh, that's better. Sorry. Don't know what happened there. Jabari Smith, the other injury with the hand fracture. We're looking at around an all-star break return for him. Obviously, if you need the injured slot, he's not good enough to hold for 10 or 12 team leagues. Maybe in 14, but even then, it's a long way away from him returning. The Golden State Warriors. Quite a few names on this list here. Draymond Green is questionable for rest due to a back issue. That's not ideal. We know that Steph's got the knee thing and he's going to be sitting out games on back-to-backs as we move forward. Andrew Wiggins is returning, but Draymond with the back, we've got to watch that one. John Kuminga, I think, is going to be out until February with the ankle, not worth a hold in that spot. Brandon Pajemski, they came out and said, actually, you had no timetable to return. Thanks for that. He's only missed 7 in a row. So it'd be great if we had had that information earlier, which it seemed like it was going to be what would happen, and they just didn't tell us that. He's obviously not worth a hold, and with those two guys out, it helps Buddy Hield, it helps Kyle Anderson, it helps Trace Jackson Davis. But the only one of those guys that I want in 12-team leagues is Jackson Davis. Even though Hield played 65 minutes over the last 2 games, that is largely because Andrew Wiggins was out. So I'm not going to look at Hield as being a 30-minute-a-night guy because Pajemski's not there. Gary Payton's also missed multiple weeks with a calf strain. He's a slow healer. He's got a lot of soft tissue, lower body injuries, and he will probably come back and play 12 minutes or so. He's out at least on Monday. He might miss the next couple, but for most of us, that doesn't really matter that much. In Detroit, it's pretty good, man. Nobody's hurt. So at this point, well, that's not true because you know Jaden Ivey's hurt, but if I rule somebody out for the season, I'm not going to put them on the list every week. So that's, yeah. Otherwise, they're good. In Denver, they're pretty good as well. I wish we'd get some updates and real information on Vlatko Čančar's knee. At the moment, I've got him back end of February. I actually do think that his season's over, but they were very clear to say that it's not. So, whatever. Not that it matters a huge amount either. And in Dallas, we got good news. Not on Luka, but on Kyrie. They said Kyrie was week to week with a back issue, and I guess that week to week now is over because he is questionable to return on Tuesday. And they've got a Tuesday-Wednesday back-to-back. I'd be pretty skeptical that Kyrie plays in both of those games. So we just keep an eye on that. And then when Kyrie returns, we have to reassess what we do. Because we've been rolling out with Grimes, we've been rolling out with Dinwiddie, we've been rolling with Marshall. I think that Grimes and Dinwiddie probably can hold some value, but they do all, and Marshall maybe, but they all do move to guys that I want to have, to guys that it's okay to have and okay not. But I still think that it's going to be one of those, it's this guy today, or it's this guy today. I think that's probably what they'll do with it. Luka was still looking at a February return for him. Maybe he misses the All-Star game as well. And then Dante Exum has not played this season. The Aussies just not there. No Matisse, no Dante. Maybe Exum's back in a week. Obviously, I don't think we need to worry about him from a fantasy perspective. In Cleveland, the only guy currently injured is Ty Jerome, and he's not injured. Milk has an illness. Maybe it was raw milk. Don't know. He missed the last game. He's a 12-minute-a-night backup. He has the occasional pop game. You can stream him in if guys are out sometimes, but overall, he's just a deep league player, and that is it. In Chicago, it is more of a robust injury report. Ayo Dosunmu is out for Tuesday's game, but there is a possibility that he returns on Wednesday in the back-to-back. We don't have an update on Kobe White and the neck issue. He missed that last game, and with both Ayo and Kobe out, Lonzo Ball started, and Lonzo played 26 minutes in this game. So that's really interesting, and if Lonzo's playing 20-ish minutes a night, then he is a rosterable player in 12-team leagues. And like I said yesterday, most of you seem to agree, he is better than Dosunmu, he is better than White, and he is better than Giddey. if he was healthy. So there is going to be a 240 game crunch. It's going to make Dosunmu not a 12-team league player, I'm pretty sure, but we'll see what they end up doing. I don't have the update on White. I'd be pretty surprised if Kobe played in both of these games if he's actually dealing with a neck problem. Seems unlikely. Torrey V. Craig is dealing with a leg issue that's going to keep him out until probably the end of January. He's not a part of the rotation, while Adama Sanogo has some knee soreness. Doesn't really matter much there. My prediction that Trey Mann might be done for the year is still on track. No real updates on him at any point soon. I've pushed his return date out to about the 27th of January. Again, I still think that there is a sizable chance that Mann does not play again this season. And then Daquan Jeffries has popped up with an illness on the injury report, and he is also just not a regular part of the rotation. They've been going to Nick Smith as part of that bench group now, and not Jeffries. In Brooklyn, big injury list. How much of it is true? That's going to be a question to determine, isn't it? Because D'Angelo Russell has now missed 4 consecutive games with a shin contusion after he left the game on the 4th of January with that was the shin contusion. The game before that, he left with cramps. So Russell has arrived to Brooklyn. He had 2 really good games and then not played again. Cam Johnson with an ankle sprain. He is going to return at some point in the next week. I just don't know when. I don't think it'll be Tuesday. I actually don't think it'll be on Wednesday either. But we don't know. Cam Thomas, at least I think 4 more games for Thomas. What about Trendon Watford? Well, maybe he's end of the week with a hamstring as well. He will have some moments later in the season of being viable. Maxwell Lewis, leg fracture. March, probably doesn't play again this season, I would guess. And then there's Bojan Bogdanovic, who, will he play a single game for the Nets in his second go-around? It doesn't feel that way. And we know that they're just rotations of production. Is it Clowney? Is it Johnson? Is it Williams? Is it Martin? Is it Ev Bonwan? All of these guys have had 12-team appeal over the last week. Ben Simmons played 32 minutes, and now they've got a Tuesday, Wednesday back-to-back, so he'll sit one of those. But hitting the right net player is so hard to do, man. Keon and Clowney are the guys I feel, and Zaire are the guys I feel more confident with, but I'm also not super confident in them. The Boston Celtics, there's only one bloke on the injury report, and it's Drew Peterson, who is in the concussion protocols. And yeah, he might be questionable for the next game, but again, for nearly everybody out here, that just won't matter. And lastly, the Atlanta Hawks, who had their last game postponed due to the icy Atlanta conditions. Trae Young was probable on that injury report. They got a back-to-back here against the Suns, then the Bulls, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I'll put Young as probable. Jalen Johnson hasn't played since that one game on the 3rd of January against the Lakers. I don't know. There's been no real update on it. It's a little bit worrying about where we're at with Johnson, but I just don't know. I'll put him questionable for this game on Tuesday. Bogdanovic was also questionable across the weekend, so I'll put him questionable here. Just after he had his best performance last Thursday, the leg injury management tag resurfaced for Bogdan, so we can look at him as an interesting enough stream option, but not super confident. And then lastly, Larry Nance, maybe an all-star game type return, but he needs one of Capella or Okongwu to be out for us to care about it for fantasy leagues. And that is the end of an injury update. It is National Hot Pastrami Day. So again, get your sandwiches out, get everything cracking, make sure. And if you're making a hot pastrami sandwich, how do you make it? What do you do differently? Are you what do you put on there? A sauerkraut legend? Is that the direction you're going? Are you putting mustard on there? Russian dressing, whatever the hell that is? I don't know. But how do you do your pastrami sandwiches? That is the key info we need to know. But what I need from you is also a thumb. I need a comment. I need to subscribe on the audio and the video as well. And I also need you to enjoy that sandwich. I need you to eat that beef, dried beef, aged beef, spiced beef. But I need you to also tell me how good it was. Did you make the sandwich? Send me a photo of a sandwich if you made one. Just lift up the good. Celebrate the good. Because you know what's good? A hot pastrami sandwich. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.